you know, I serve so many parents, and for those that were not in sports and they're trying to navigate what to do with their child, this information is really helpful. Like, no one really sits down and tells you about how to guide your child through sports, no matter what sport it will be. And so I definitely thought of you because there are a couple of things that people need to know. So when I was first broadcasting, I think, Kathy, you were my first partner for my first broadcast.
Absolutely.
And she had to guide me. Seriously, Wendy, this is what we do. This is how we do this, because, you know, even though I was trained doing TV broadcasting, and you are a master, by the way, but I so appreciated how you really guided me through the process.
Now you need to know, Wendy, though. So now you need to know that the only way that happened was they dragged me kicking and screaming into play-by-play position. Right. I had never done play-by-play. I did what you do, like analyst. That's what I've done my entire career. That is my comfort zone. That is what I love to do, want to do. Don't want to do anything else. I'm perfectly content. Even when Bart and I, with our relationship, and there's only two of us in the booth, we will switch back and forth roles sometimes because we need to. I can tell when he's scrambling for notes and I'll, you know, introduce an athlete or whatever. But when we work together, Wendy, first time ever I had ever done play-by-play. And we were live, if you remember. So yeah. I'm going, oh my God. So, and they're like, you can do this. I go, no, I'm used to analyzing. I can't do. Trust me, you'll do it. And we had a wonderful producer. So both of us were actually firsties, newbies doing these roles. And it was a blast.
That's true. That was fun. And then also what was great is that we had done this tour together. The Vidal Sassoon National.
You know, I still have break out into hives if I have to go in a mall. All these years later, I call it mauling. I will not go in a mall. They give me like, we were 30 malls, like, and I don't know if I ever told you this, what I had to give up to do that.
Wow.
So I had already committed to Vidal Sassoon. I'm glad I did it. Just to be clear, I'm glad I did because we had a wonderful time. But shortly after I committed to doing that, somebody called our gym at Scats from the traveling whatever of cats.
Wow.
Okay, yes, and wanted me to do it. And so the woman who took the call, the receptionist, she was a stepmom of one of the gymnasts there. She was a classically opera trained singer. Just happened to be like that was her sort of side thing that nobody knew. So she's like standing at the door when I walk into the gym, so she can tell me that this call came in, and she's so excited. And she tells me the dates and what we're going to start. And I go, well, okay, first of all, I can't sing. Okay, I don't sing. She goes, they're not hiring you to sing. They're hiring you. Like, they know that. She goes, and I'll teach you how to character. I can teach you that. You have got to do this. And she tells me the dates. I go, oh my God, I can't do it. I am going on this 30, you know, and I tell her this whole thing. She goes, no, like, no, you have to cancel. So I had to turn that down.
Oh,
I know, but, and I didn't realize at the time how much I needed to do something like that.
Artistic, yes.
Artistic. I've done so many different things. And then I danced after gymnastics for like 10 years. And I go, I want to be on stage. I wanted to do that. And so anyway, sorry I took you down that rabbit hole, but.
No, it was fun. I mean, it was Kathy and I, and then Mitch would come in, the heartthrob.
Yes, on the weekends. And yeah.
We'd come in on the weekends.
Remember our little thing? He was up on a handstand and I had to walk underneath. I'm talking and he would drop down, give me a kiss on the cheek from a handstand.
Oh, right.
Everybody's favorite part. I was like, oh God.
So we're going down the old road of shows and things like that. But eventually we came to the point. We hung up our dance shoes and our performance shoes, got married, and then Kathy has a son who became a really great pole vaulter. And so there's so many questions. So first, I know we're talking because I have known you forever, but give us a little of your background, your athletic background, a little bit.
Okay, my background. Yes. So I started gymnastics very late. Did not start till I was 12. I was an athlete though before, tiny though, like ridiculously small. I was teeny tiny, running track, doing track and field. I played softball. I had 4 brothers. So I literally played all the sports with my brothers, which included football, basketball, baseball. My dad would pitch to me with a hard ball with all my brothers so I could hit, I could throw. But what I did best at the time was run fast. So I was fast, or I could run far. I could run forever. And I loved running. And I could jump. But I was about 3 feet, like I was teeny tiny. So when I saw gymnastics for the first time, my brain went, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I can do that. I remember one of the first, because I had done acrobatics, and I was a cheerleader, by the way. So I was a cheerleader, and I was doing little acrobatic stuff in elementary school. They put me in a little elementary school end of the year show, and we did this little performance, and I did chest rolls and walkovers and kickovers and all this stuff. And my friend, her mother was the PE coach at the junior high, which we were going to the very next year, and the gymnastics coach. So she's sitting there and asked, well, you should come over to gymnastics, come over to Hoover Junior High School, with Sherry. That was my friend's name. Come over and watch. So I went in the summer right before school would be starting, and Coach Deppner, who was the other coach there, invited me out onto the floor, taught me a back handspring the first day.
Wow.
Yes. So did the back handspring, and then he did his usual thing, which I didn't know this was his usual thing. The last thing you do before you do it all by yourself, he just holds on to your leotard. So he's not actually holding your body to spot. Right. He's just got your leotard. And he said, if you mess up, I'm like, not going to mess up. So I did it, and then I did it by myself. But before I did it, he did this thing, do or die for Hoover Junior High. And he did that every time that anybody was going to do something new. Flash forward 13 and a half years from that moment, because I started gymnastics at that moment, at the Olympics, before my final routine ever on beam, I flashed back and said, do or die for Hoover Junior High. I kid you not. I mean, my headspace was all over the place. That was a very stressful thing at the Olympics and at home, and falling 2 days before I was a mess. And yet I was finding I can't even tell you the out of body experiences I was having. And in that last moment, do or die for Hoover Junior High, because I flashed back, thank God, to that little 12-year-old who fell in so deeply in love with the sport of gymnastics.
That's so interesting.
It captured my heart. All of my inspiration songs toward the end were love songs. I know that sounds very bizarre, but it was my relationship. It was my first love. It's what it felt like. Still feels like.
Oh, that's amazing. So now I have a little bit more understanding, because when I saw Sean doing, now granted, oftentimes pole vaulters, especially female pole vaulters, were former gymnasts. Yeah. I've seen that a lot. That's happened a lot.
John was not.
Huh?
John did not do gymnastics.
Oh, so you got to give us.
I am not kidding you. So he looks like he did gymnastics. Everybody assumed he did gymnastics because of the way he vaults, and of course because, you're his mother, so of course he did gymnastics. He did Mommy and Me. So he did Mommy and Me, and what were they called? Forgot what they called the next group up, but when we lived in California still. So he did it until he was maybe 5 years old, 5.5, and we moved to Florida. So he did it a couple of years, but not gymnastics. Okay, he did, trust me, they wanted him, because there were things that he would do that I would go, whoa, that's, oh my God. Like even just his handstand, he had a perfect toe point. His toe point was better than mine, which that could never, ever happen. But it was better than mine. Perfectly straight legs. He could go into a handstand and straighten up and stretch. Like I could tell when they were telling him to do something, I'd go. And then, of course, he was strong, tiny, fearless, fast, all of these things. I don't want to say the problem. The other part of his being loved body contact, wrestling, ball throwing, crashing, all the things that aren't in gymnastics.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could kind of tell, all right, could we capture him and direct him into gymnastics? Oh, absolutely. And there's a part of him that would have thrived and been amazing. But I could tell his spirit and it was going other places. And then here's when I knew with certainty. So we moved to Florida and he started playing soccer. He did baseball, and he asked me at one point, he goes, how come I don't do gymnastics anymore? And I went, oh, do you want to? If you want to, I'll go find a gym. We just moved here. I don't know the gyms nearby, but yeah, we can find one. And then I thought for a second, I said, but I'm going to share something with you. And I said, you love all these other sports that I can tell. And I said, and I know you can be great at gymnastics. In fact, I can see the future in this. The moment they see you, they're going, whoa, whoa, try to pull him in. And I said, and when that happens, gymnastics becomes everything. And for the person who loves it more than anything, more than everything, as I did, that's great. It's I can't get enough. I said, but it goes to 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, then 4. It goes very fast in those early years. So then you have to make decisions. What about soccer, baseball? And I could see him thinking, processing. He goes, oh, I think I like, and so he knew then, yes, he liked doing gymnastics, but he liked doing the tumbling and all that stuff. I don't know that he really wanted to do all of the other stuff. So he kind of made the decision, no, I don't want to give up my soccer or my baseball or my wrestling or there's no time, really.
Yeah.
So, and he was sort of playing violin at the time. That went by the wayside very
quickly.
Well, yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, all he wanted to do was learn how to read music. Once he could read music, he could care less what it sounded like. So I was like, that sounds, and he wouldn't practice.
Oh.
He loved his teacher. He loved working hard for her. But I would tell him, I go, Sean, she's going to tell if you've not been practicing. She can tell if you're not improving. You got to do it. So there were other things he'd rather do with his free time. If it wasn't sports, he loved reading. If he's going to be still and do it, he wanted to read because he's a voracious reader. So
that is so interesting. I think you made a really good point, which I think people, and I kind of heard this as I've talked to other moms, is to really listen. You kind of present it to him. You have to understand this. Gymnastics, which is true, it's a really big commitment, and that somehow your children will kind of let you know. They'll kind of figure it out, because I know there are a lot of parents that want to push their kid in a certain way, and I don't know how that could be successful.
Yeah, it's like I remember getting comments from, not comments, but sort of questions and stuff when they would ask me or tell me, yeah, I was thinking about putting my daughter in gymnastics, but she's going to be tall and I'm going, so when you're young, you should try everything. And if your child wants to try gymnastics I think every single child on the planet should do gymnastics in the beginning. I just do. I think it's the most amazing activity before it's ever a sport, before it's ever a passion or then becomes a dream and a goal, and then it's work.
Right.
Long before any of that, it is the most fun play that a child can do that literally works everything. Speed, strength, balance, confidence, flexibility, everything you could possibly want a child to be exposed to, because it's the most phenomenal base for any sport, whether it stays whether they stay in gymnastics, whether they get tall, whether they can't jump, whether they're not, where their upper body weight, like you discover that along the way. And I said, trust me, your child will let you know. It'll be obvious to you when it's time to try something different, to do something different. They'll either tell you, or you'll see all of a sudden there's fear, or there's, like they don't want to do certain things, or they can't do certain things no matter how hard they try. And then they want to start doing other things.
That's good. I mean, I appreciate it, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of parents kind of struggle with. How do you move on? How do you do it? And so many of the champion minds I've talked to, their kids did like a lot of sports before they chose their first one. It was very rarely did someone say I started at this young age and they went all the way through. Most everybody said they did a variety of things before their child.
So Sean did like probably soccer is what captured his heart, his spirit, his mind, his everything. And because he was fast as fury and tough, even though he was always the smallest on the field, he was always the smallest, fastest, toughest. He'd hit the ground, bounce back up, and he never stopped. It's like everybody goes, the coaches ultimately, they're like, okay, Sean has the whole left side. Like he did mid, shooter, whatever. And he loved it. And in fact, a lot of his teammates, they actually believed that he didn't get tired. One of them said it at one point, because one of them like just, run half the field and the ball went flying back, and they expected Sean to run all the way back to get it. And he looked at him, and Sean kind of looked at him like, dude, he goes, all right. So he takes off running afterwards. Kid goes, yeah, but you don't get tired. And Sean goes, I get tired. I just don't stop. Like, I don't stop when I get tired. I still run. And he could recover really fast. But so soccer was his base. It was his base for everything. Then, because a lot of people would ask, how do you find pole vaulting? Like, how do you know about an obscure event like pole vaulting? Well, my brother had vaulted at UCLA, and he was late to vaulting. He had played football. He had intended to walk on at Auburn to play football. He had taught himself how to pole vault in high school. Wow. Ended up a 17-foot vaulter, which is pretty darn amazing, with no coaching, no nothing. And he ended up vaulting for UCLA. So Sean was aware of the event, because well, let me show it to you. There is, hold on. So those over there, the one on the bottom, that's my brother vaulting at UCLA. So that hung up in Sean's little child's room. So he saw it. You know, this guy hanging on the end of a bent pole, getting ready to catapult himself over a 17-foot bar. So we went to a track meet, because Brian and I love track and field. We love it. So we would take Sean to the meets here in Florida, and always take a friend, this one friend, Jacob, the one who thought Brian or Sean never got tired.
Right.
He ended up kicking, by the way, for the Citadel, Jacob, because he had a hell of a leg. Hated to run, but he had a heck of a leg. So anyways, we would go to the track meet. And one time, out of the blue, I just asked them as they were watching, I said, so guys, if you were to do track and field, which event would you want to do? And Jacob immediately was like, oh, because it all involved running, the very thing he hated to do. I said, Jacob, you got to learn to like running. You're a soccer player, for God's sake, you have to run. And he goes, well, I don't know. And Sean immediately, without hesitation, I think he was like 11 years old, pole vault. I go, really? I go, you'd like to try pole vault? I'm thinking, oh, so now in my mind.
Wow.
Because you got to understand. So I have loved pole vault forever. I wanted to pole vault when I'd watch my brother, and I love figuring out the mechanics of it, the speed of it. Anyways, what year was it? I was covering Goodwill Games in St. Petersburg, Russia, 1994.
Okay.
Brian and I had just gotten engaged. So I'm in my 30s, like approaching like 33, 34, whatever. And I'm sitting with all the track and field commentators. And I look down at the arena because we went to watch track and field and we're just chatting away with them. And all of a sudden I go, oh, that's a girl pole vaulting. Because they didn't have women pole vaulters back then. And I'm like,
right.
And Dwight Stones, Olympic high jumper, he goes, yeah. He said it's going to be an exhibition event at the next Olympics. So in Atlanta, I think it was Atlanta. And then a full event. I go, oh, I could do that. And they're like, and so I'm 5 feet tall. And he goes, are you, he goes, well, I know you could do the gymnastics part. And he said, and actually the world record is not that high right now because they're just beginning. He goes, are you fast? I go, yes, I ran track before gymnastics. My event was hurdles. I was a sprinter. I'm like, I'm fast. And I was in great shape because I'd been dancing for all those years. So I'd kept in great shape. Flash forward, one of the really good coaches in LA, because we were living in LA, was going to have a pole vault clinic. So I get myself out there and I borrow some guy's pole. Like, and I had been telling all these coaches, I can do this. And Anthony Curran, who was UCLA's coach, and he'd gone to the Olympic trials himself. There was a coach from Mount Sac. All these great pole vault coaches happened to be there. And I run down there. I bend the pole the first time up. They're like, oh my God, you could do this. I go, I've been telling you.
Wow.
So all of a sudden I've got offers from coaches to, coach me. And it's like, seriously, you could literally do this. And right now there are so few vaulters. And I think the world record was like 14. It wasn't like crazy high. And the guy's pole that I borrowed, like he couldn't even bend his pole. And I'm like, this tiny thing, go down there and bent it. So anyways, I thought it through and I go, wait a minute. I'm 34, something like that, 35. We're getting married. I do want to have a child at some point. We can't put it off it's not like I'm mid-30s now. So when do I fit in when do I fit that in if I'm going to start training again, and maybe what if I am good? Oh my God, what if I am good? So I didn't even start.
Interesting.
I didn't even try because I said, I cannot tempt myself. So guess what? I gave birth to a pole vaulter. That is the next best. Actually, no, it's better than. It's better than. So here's I said soccer captured his spirit, but pole vault ended up being the most perfect event. He had everything except height. He's 5'7". So for a pole vaulter that jumps over 18 feet, he was crazy good. To be 5'7" and jumping over an 18-foot bar.
Interesting.
And it takes speed, it takes guts, it takes gymnastics, which I ended up flash forward. Like in the beginning, I didn't coach him at all. No. He had a coach that was, but after he went to Penn, and then there are very few great pole vault coaches.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a hard event to coach.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches that can, if you've got a coach that can just keep you safe, teach you the basics so that you can plant the pole and get, that's good. But to really, really jump high, it's hard. So because I had a passion for the event and I love my kid, saw his talent and knew what he could do, I just studied his vault. I studied it. I learned it. And I would only, especially as he got older, only if he asked, for input. And then he started asking more and more. He realized there was, in fact, the first time that I realized, oh my God, he really does trust me in certain areas, especially with pole progression or moving his standards, was at NCAAs. His freshman year, he qualified for NCAAs. And bars high, like it's moving up. And all of a sudden, he looks up at me and he's going, standards? And I'm like, we're up in the stands. All the coaches are down there. And I'm like, talking, me? So I've got the iPad and I go back, I look. He goes in, out. I go, 5 centimeters, move him in 5 centimeters. Because you
That's
have
so interesting.
So there's so many things you have to know about pole vaulting. Like, first of all, you're vaulting, there's wind. You have to decide when to go up a pole because poles get stiffer or they're longer. Then you can lower your grip, you can raise your grip. And then the bar, you have to clear the bars. So sometimes by just tiny amounts, if the bar is too close, you're going to hit it on the way up. If it's too far out, you're going to come down on it. Mm-hmm. So you have to make standards calls. And if you're standing from the side, I was seated in a good place and I could tell he needed to move them in just a little bit. And we moved him in. I go, oh God, I hope I'm right. I know I'm right. I know I'm right. Sure enough, he clears it. It was so awesome. And then we just sort of created open communication. He'd send me videos. I'd study them. I'd look at them, give him my, my thoughts, my opinions. And he'd take what he wanted and not the, like that's all you can do really. And he would take what he needed. Sometimes because he's not a gymnast. Okay. This is the problem. He looks like a gymnast and he looks like a gymnast to me. So I think he understands swing and flight and all that, center of gravity, center of like all this stuff. But he does, like, he goes, how many times do I have to tell you I'm not a gymnast? I go, so I have to figure out a way to translate into his language because guess what he is? An engineer. So that's like, he needs to know, no, do this, do that, and then figure things out on his own. So, I mean, he did an amazing job of being resourceful, reaching out. He had an incredible mentor, who was the father of the phenom, Mondo Duplantis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. His dad took like Brian reached out to him, when Sean first thought, he got really down his freshman year before he had his breakthrough. He got really down and really felt like he had chosen the wrong event. He should have done soccer. He should have done wrestling. He should have done, he says, I'm too short. I chose the wrong, and he was really upset. So Brian reached out to Greg Duplantis, who was a 19-foot vaulter himself, a phenomenal coach, 4 Olympic trials, almost made, like he was 4 in the final Olympic trials that he competed in. The same weekend he took the bar exam. Okay. So anyways, just impressive guy. But more than that, when we called, he took Brian's call. We had to have been on the phone an hour and a half, 2 hours. And as we're talking, because all Brian wanted to know was, Greg, we know you jumped 19 feet. I can't find anywhere. How tall were you? Because our son is convinced he's picked the wrong event and he's too short. And Greg goes, how tall is he? He's 5'7". Oh, he goes, he's not short. He's looking at it the wrong way. And Greg was 5'6".
Wow.
15 feet. Fast as a buzzsaw. Like he was fast. And as we're talking on the phone, he Googles Sean, found some videos and went, that's an 18-foot takeoff. I got to see what's going on to see why. And he found the little problem, something Sean had never been told, something I would have never been able to figure out. Once I heard, I went, oh, bingo, now I can see it. He was pulling down. Once you pull down instead of swing up, like it opened up a thing for me, but also for Sean. And Sean ended up jumping over 17 feet, second team All-American. ultimately jumped over 18 feet. And then, of course, COVID and injury and surgery and as you know, and this is probably one of the most important things you can talk to your parent about. It's like being able to navigate when things happen that alter one's course. And sometimes they happen earlier, sometimes they happen later. I remember, so I coached my entire career. Even when I was at home doing gymnastics in my backyard, I was lucky enough to have bars and beam in my backyard. The younger gymnasts would come to my house and I would coach them because I just liked teaching and coaching. But anyways, I was like, so flash forward, I was training in Atlanta, coaching a young team there, just about making the decision with my coaches, who I loved dearly, dearly, to make a move and go out to SCATS, to go out to California, because I was sliding into retirement, coming off an injury that had almost retired me. It finally looked like it was going to heal. And I knew, my coaches knew, everybody knew I needed to probably make this move. I needed to put myself out of my comfort zone, go out and train with other gymnasts that are trying to make this Olympic team. I need to be pushed. And it was getting harder and harder for these two coaches who loved me dearly to push, because they didn't want to push too hard, too far, too hard. Like, you know, it was just hard. And I was coaching this young group that I had to say goodbye to, that I had to explain to them why I was leaving a place I loved, coaches I loved, coaches who had gotten me, who had saved me when I had first moved there with a broken heart, a broken spirit, a broken everything. Made an Olympic team in 1980 with them. Made the 81 and 83 world champion, or 81 world championships there. And yet with their encouragement was going to make this move, but saying goodbye to a group of girls. They were probably 10 to 12 years of age. And I remember bringing them together. It was my last night in the gym. Bunny Cook had come over to me and just hugged me really fast. She goes, I can't say goodbye. I'm just going to say so long. And bolted out of the gym. That was my coach, one of my coaches. Her husband was my other coach. He was picking me up in the morning to take me to the airport with my trunks and all. But I had to talk to my girls and explain to them why their coach was leaving, because I also wanted them to know they were in an amazing place. I'm not leaving this place because this isn't an amazing gym with a fantastic coaches, and I love you all, and I wish I could stay here. I said, but here's the thing. I've got one last chance. One last chance to do something I've dreamed of since I was your age. And if I don't make this move and really do this last really big, bold move to do this, I will end up with a hole this big in my being, in my heart. I said, and you wouldn't even want me to coach you then. I said, I can't, I have to do this so that I don't regret not doing everything I needed to do for this one last shot. And I said, and I know you're not going to understand this right now. It may take you to your 30 to understand this. But and the littlest of all of them came up to me afterwards and said, I don't have to be 30 years old. I understand right now. I'm like, bless you. But one of the gymnasts in this group, her name was Beth Grabowski. And about, I'm going to say, just a few months earlier, she had hit a hard time in her gymnastics. So she all of a sudden grew. So here I have all these little bitties doing gymnastics, and they're learning everything fast, fast, fast. And she grew, and she was all legs. Like she had legs up to here, flexible and all. But all of a sudden, gymnastics got hard.
Yeah.
It got really hard. Not everything, because some of the things, the flexibility stuff, like, you know, that was easy. That was beautiful. And she started getting scared of things. Understandably.
Yes. Yep.
Understandably. So one day in the gym, and I could see it coming, you know, I'm watching her closely, and we were getting to the point where we're going to have to start putting routines together. Season's going to come. We got to start putting routines together, start doing halves, and she literally lost it. Okay. Burst into tears, goes running to the bathroom. Okay. And now I'm still training. I am at probably one of the hardest times in my training. Okay. Wow. Where, trust me, there were days I wanted to burst into tears and go running out the door and never come back. So I told the kids, I said, I got somebody to watch them, and I took off after her and followed her in and sat in the bathroom with her. And I said, can I just sit with you? So we just sat there. We were there for 45 minutes.
Wow.
I'm just going to sit here with you. And she's crying and crying. I said, when you want to talk, I said, just let me know. And she could hardly talk. And I finally said, Beth, do you want to quit gymnastics? And she went like this. And she put her head down. I said, you know, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to think that. I said, and in fact, there are days I think of it 2-3 times a day. And she looks at me, because we build up quitting to be this big, bad, horrible thing, you know, that you should never do. And trust me, my entire career, I lived afraid of quitting. So, like, it became my greatest fear that I would quit, that I wouldn't retire, that I wouldn't know when the time was to say, that's it. You know, I'm done. I'm going to retire. And I could not feel that. So here I am talking to a young girl. And I said, Beth, I know what this feels like. She goes, there's no way. And all of a sudden, the floodgates just open. There's no way you know what it feels like. You don't know what it feels like to see all these people. They're learning things that are so easy for them, and I can't do this. And now I'm afraid of the thing I could do. And she's just going on and on and on. And I went, oh, yes, I do. I'm getting ready to go out and train with 13, 14, and 15-year-olds that are learning things like this. I said, and things are hard for me right now. And she couldn't, she's like, I think part of her goes, no, there's no way. You're an Olympian. You're this, that you can't have these same feelings. I go, oh, yes, I can. I said, how about, I'm going to say something to you that you're probably not going to understand. And you may think I'm crazy. I said, but here's the thing. It may be time to quit, but it may not be. I said, here's what I would like to do. I said, first of all, I want you to know that if you want to quit, and when you do want to, I will help you. I will help you do it. I said, but I want it to be a wise decision. I want you to be able to think through everything. I said, what if we did this? What if we, for the next 2 weeks, I laid it out. We come in and we only do the things you like to do. All the things that are fun, that are easy, that make you feel good, that build your confidence, and all the things that don't, we're going to put them aside for a little bit. I said, and then we'll add a little bit in as we go. I said, as we get closer to season and it's time where we really need to start putting together routines, and we'll see if we can do that. And you'll tell me then if we can do that and it's okay. Anyways, we go through this process. She stayed. And in fact, she was with that group. When I said goodbye to my team, she was still doing it. And after I got to California, a few months later, I got a letter from Beth Grabowski that said, it didn't take me. Oh, because I forgot to tell you the thing I told her. You're going to laugh now. I said, someday, Beth, you're going to be 45 years old, maybe. Say sometime in your 40s, and you're going to be married and you're going to have a few kids and things are going to get really hard. And you're going to get so frustrated and you can't get everything done. And you're trying to do your job and you're trying to take care of kids. And she's looking at me like this. And I said, and you're going to feel like running out that door crying and quit. And I don't want you to do it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a plan. So anyways, the letter began. It didn't take me till I was 45. And she says, you're not going to believe it, but I'm still doing gymnastics. I'm not competing at club. I'm competing high school. And I'm loving it. And guess what I learned to do? A standing back, which she could not do to save her life with this long body, but she never gave up. And she kept doing it. And I ran into her. She came to one of my meets. I was broadcasting. And I used to tell this story in my talks, you know, the whole thing about quitting. And when you are faced with being the parent of a child who wants to stop, who wants to move on, how do you navigate that? How do you help them think everything through and make a wise decision? Because then, as I told her, guess what, Beth? When you make a wise decision, it's not quitting. It's not quitting. It's making a wise decision and moving on. And you'll find the next thing that you're going to do. I said, it's only quitting when you just don't want to deal with anything and you just stop. Instead, no, let's think through everything. Let's think wisely. And we'll communicate every day. And the moment you decide that we've thought through everything and you want to quit, I'm going to help you do it, because then it's not quitting.
Oh, that's great. I mean, and so helpful, really, just so helpful, because people don't always look at it that way. And you're right. Sometimes we have a really bad attitude about quitting, but you're talking about it may be time to move on. And I think for parents, especially because you talked about it, it's really hard if your child is struggling at that time. It really, you know, it's kind of one of the hardest things ever. And, you know, the fact that you have to give it time, that you might need to make a change, you know, all those things that take the time to consider everything. Is real. And give yourself a little bit of time. I think in your story, I think the most important thing you said is you got to give yourself a little grace. You give yourself room.
And you have to learn how. So you have to learn how to communicate.
Big.
And the only way a child learns how to communicate is when they are empowered to do so by the adults, whether it's their parents, whether it's their coaches, whether it's their teachers. And instead of making all the decisions for the child and telling them and guiding them, or not looking for the signs because you don't want to see them. I mean, it's hard because a lot of parents fall in love with the sport too. They fall in love with all the parts that are so fun and so wonderful. And what I keep reminding parents is, but you're not the one putting on the leotard every single day and going in there and dealing with the ups and the downs, the positives and the negatives. So you have to be aware that they're doing the work, that they're dealing with the frustrations, they're dealing with the highs and the lows and the wins and the not. And so to be a good parent is to be the eyes, ears, and conscience for the sport, for your child, to be aware, and then empower them to find their voice, to use their voice to communicate with you, which includes sometimes being able to say things you don't want to hear, or you wish you didn't have to hear, or you wish they didn't think or feel or fear. They need to feel like it's okay to talk things out. Because sometimes when they just talk about it, then they realize, oh, now that I've sort of let it out, it's not that big and bad and terrible. Same thing with a coach. You can't just, we can't do don't ask, don't tell. It's like, especially when you start seeing your child struggling, or especially when you start sensing that maybe they're developing fear or frustration, or they're falling out of love with something that, but you loved it and we loved it and we're going to like, you got to keep loving. Like, no, hold on. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop on the spot, but they need to be able to express those feelings as they come up, because otherwise they tamp them down and they come out sideways.
Interesting. Yes, yes.
Okay. So then you start seeing these other things and you're like, instead of just being able to say in the moment when the feeling first hit them, when they first started feeling these different things that they haven't felt or thought before in any activity, whether it's gymnastics, whether it's whether it's, any of these sports, especially ones they've done for a while, especially if they're a point where they're, it's easy to do something when you've got an abundance of talent and things are just coming easy for a long time. For those of us that went on to the Olympics, we know what that feels like. I remember thinking, because I told you, I taught kids in my backyard, okay, little kids. And some had varying, levels of just natural talent, natural ability. Sometimes it's just, there's a lot of natural innate ability. You can see it, you can feel it. And I remember not being able to teach something that was so easy. Like, and I'm telling you exactly what I do and how you do it, and they couldn't do it. And I remember thinking, okay. So that was a good thing for me to register all the way back then.
Yeah.
For me as a coach, for me as a parent, for me as anything, so that I understood, well, for some people that is hard. For some people it's even impossible. Okay. It actually is. Okay. And to have that understanding and that empathy, because then when, as somebody who had this crazy level of talent, you get to the point where, oh my God, now I'm up at the edge of it. Now, because you're going to get to the edge of your talent at some point. I don't care how great you are going to come to the edge if you do it long enough and you push hard enough and you go, oh, this is what it felt like. Because I'm trying really hard and I'm working really hard. And there were a few things I go, I can't do that. I can't do that. And it's a scary feeling when you're used to things being easy. But recognizing that when you're teaching or you're coaching or you're parenting, to have an understanding of that, an awareness of that. And it's why you'll never hear me say, and it doesn't mean I don't want kids dreaming big dreams, like even crazy big dreams. That's what drives us, and it's such a sweet there's nothing more precious than a child's dream. And then being able to get close and keep going up here like this. But I will never say to anyone, if you dream it and believe it and work hard enough and never give up, you can do anything. That's just not true. That doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean you don't dream. It doesn't mean you don't keep pushing. I don't want to ever set up a child because they're going to believe everything you say. They're going to believe that with especially from an Olympian. Okay. Especially if I tell them, I don't want a child getting to the point where they've done all they can do and they go, but if I had just wanted it more, if I had just worked harder, if I had just, I know people that worked just as hard, wanted it just as much, did everything they could, and did not make an Olympic team or a world championship or a national team. Sometimes things happen that alter one's course. Okay. That's one thing. Sometimes there's just like, you have to have at least a certain amount of talent in so many areas and natural ability to build on it. You can't just suddenly, like, you can't suddenly magically create that. You can improve it. You can make it better. You can make the most. So mine has always been, you can work to be the very best you can possibly be. That is within all of our power. And then recognize sometimes there's some luck. I will never, ever say, I mean, sometimes there's some bad luck things.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes there's a pandemic. I mean, who would have thought, like, how many courses were altered in that because it changed the timing, an unlucky injury that you were doing everything right and something just happens, or it just gives, it just goes, like, so you said it before, it's grace. We have to be able to give ourselves grace. We have to be able to give others grace. We have to become as aware as possible as we watch our child journey through any activity, any sport. And then if they happen to be in that very, very tip top and they've got that kind of talent, and they've got the level of obsessive passion, like
you
that's
said
something that it's an intangible.
It's
and
true.
Not everybody does have that sort of, and that's a good thing. I want to stress that because it is a double-edged sword, people.
Right.
And you need
to reach those heights.
I talked to my son about that. It's like your superpower is also it's a double-edged sword because it can be like a saber, or it can, slash you to ribbons if you let it. So, yeah.
Oh, you're right. Kathy, you've given us so much good stuff. I really appreciate it. We maybe got to do this one again. But no, it's been so helpful because you really are able to put both your career and Sean's career in something that's different than what you're doing. But I think it's so important that you tell the parents that how much aware they need to be. Like
they do, because they can help their child pivot. That's a new thing that a lot of people are talking about. It doesn't mean you set out on a course looking for ways to, to get off your path. I mean, sometimes you set a path, but there are times when you need to recognize if it is time to pivot, and there's a wise way to do that. And when you have support, your support group, and for athletes, it's their coach, their parents, they're depending on where they are in their age. And I loved that Bill Sands told me this years and years ago, the way that he saw coaching and the role of a coach, that you have to evolve just as your athletes are evolving. Parents have to as well, because in the beginning, you're leading, you're in front, you're leading, you're guiding, you're, telling them where to go, you're exposing them to a lot of different things. And then there comes a point when you're like side by side, where you're kind of walking the path together. You're still there, very, very aware. And then there's a time when you step back, and what you are, and they may not know it, and they probably should know it, is you are their safety net. You are their safety net when they're dreaming big, when they're working hard and they believe something amazing is going to happen. And you want that for them, but what you're providing them is that safety net in the event things alter their course or change. You're right there, your support, but you're behind them. You're not pushing or guiding or like you're there. And that's what I did with Sean. I was like, he always knew we're there. And you need me, I'll step up. You need, words, you need, advice, you need coaching, you need whatever. I'm there. But it's a tricky balance to find that you're not offering it when it hasn't been asked for.
Yeah. Yeah, the tricky balance, as you say, all of parenting is, and then adding sports on top of that. But I tell you, I want to thank you again. You've given us such great information, and your story's so great. And besides, it's super fun to talk to you because I miss it so much. But thank you. We're going to be reaching out more, but it's really good to hear. And so I think it's great where parents just can sit down and just listen to your story and listen to your advice. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.